She walked away from her job, packed a table in her car, and built a movement on human connection. Hi, everyone. I'm Raymond Lee, the host of Clocking Out. Today's guest is Lia James. Lia is originally from Virginia, and she grew up with some pretty aspirational goals, which early on was heavily influenced by her parents who served in the public. I found it interesting how Lia landed her first job through creating two versions of her resume, one with her original name, Aurelia, and the second with her nickname, Lia. This approach made a great impression to her first manager, who took Lia under her wings and was the catalyst to launching 3 startups of her own. You're going to see in this conversation that Lia's career path is non-linear by design, from social media strategist to career coach to woodworking hobbyist. Each of these pivots were driven by curiosity, burnout, and necessity. I feel like you're going to resonate with Lia's approach to human connection with this concept she created: conversations are infrastructure. So without further ado, please enjoy Lia James and her clocking out journey. Lia James, welcome to the podcast. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I am giddy about our conversation today. I did a lot of research in your background, and I know we've connected a while ago. The one thing that really struck me was this idea of reframing human connection. And you had shared something on your LinkedIn profile that at some point is conversations are infrastructure. And I think that is just so cool because for me, it's so relatable to the conversations that I'm having with this podcast around these conversations being infrastructure for individuals who are sort of thinking about what's meaningful for them in their life and really what the journey is. And one thing I love about this experience is the learnings that come from, these human connections. And so I just love the idea of conversations being infrastructure. And I really love the work that you're doing. And I'm just really excited to kind of dig into that today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited about the work that I'm doing too, honestly. It's been a while since I've been this excited. Mm-hmm. And I think, similar to the work that you're doing where you are capturing these conversations and stories, I think sometimes we take for granted the conversations that we have, or they happen in pockets. So it's like a moment or a burst of inspiration, and it is just that. But it actually has such a longer ripple effect than sometimes we acknowledge or realize. And I think I'm also witnessing, as technology is rapidly advancing and has my entire career, sometimes we undervalue the power of conversation and the space for conversation, right? We're moving so fast and we're doing so much to keep up and stay ahead and be cutting edge. And we value the technology so much and then think, well, conversation's just natural. It's going to happen. It's going to be there no matter what. It'll always be there. But if we're really intentional about when and how and who we have conversation with, I think it can create a different type of foundation and structure for innovation and for the things that we create, to make sure that the ripple effects we have are positive as opposed to potentially harmful, which we know that a lot of the things that have been built over the years has created harm that we didn't take the time to really think about and say, ooh, what might happen if we do this and it goes wrong?
Yeah, I love that. I think that the technology is a catalyst to bringing people together in order to have these kind of conversations. And so here we are.
Here we are. And yes, I agree with you too, actually. I don't think my career would be what it is without access to the technology that I've had. It has opened doors for me that I don't think I would have had access to or even known about without technology. So, yes.
Absolutely. So, Lia, we know that the work that you're doing today isn't where it started. And I'd be curious, and I know our listeners love a good origin story. So tell us, where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
I'm originally from King George, Virginia, which is a small little town just south of D.C. and right across the river from Maryland, Southern Maryland.
Nice. What did your parents do for a living?
My dad, he also had kind of an evolving career, but the bulk of his career, he has been a consultant and lobbyist for nonprofits and localities. He did a lot with like area aging on agencies. He, before that, was a county administrator for the small town that I grew up in. I remember being 5 years old and having my lawn picketed. That was kind of an interesting small town rural experience. But before that, what brought us to King George, he was the head of Parks and Rec. And so that little evolution gave me an early introduction to entrepreneurship and service work and impact entrepreneurship specifically. And then my mom, she comes from a background in therapeutic recreation. So she did a whole lot of different things too, where she worked in childhood obesity and helped people learn how to have active, healthy lives. She worked in Parks and Rec as well, and the 4-H Center, and then moved into, this will be interesting in our conversation later, but she actually moved into working in vision therapy and helping folks with cognitive disabilities and concussions and other visual impairments learn how to strengthen the eye movement and motor skills to be able to communicate and operate in a world when their life has maybe changed in some capacity.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I feel pretty fortunate. It was a neat exposure to have those two parents in my life.
Yeah, it sounds like they were very service driven in terms of the work that they did. So what was your most memorable moment as a young girl growing up?
Oh, wow. Okay. This really funny story of my sister and I when it was just the two of us before my brother was born. My sister is a Tom Sawyer, where she's really good at directing things and getting people to like do the work. And I've always been amazed by how she delegates work, like in a really like cool way. Like she knows how to like pull people in for their strengths, and she's not like threatened by that. So when we were kids, we used to go down to the river and play with our dogs. And there was this stick that like kind of went far out into the water. And she was quite a bit taller than me. She's 2 years older than I am. And we were probably the age of like 4 and, well, nope, this was before my brother was born. So I would have been 2 or 3. Okay, real young. But there are pictures, and I swear I have memories, but they could be told memories. Unclear. So she threw the stick in for the dog, and she didn't want to get wet. So she sent me in for the stick, and she convinced me that like I was doing this like hero journey. And so I went in for the stick, and the water was like up to here. And there's always been this like really funny story about how she like really leaned into this hero story. And I was like, all right, I'm doing it. And as this little like child, like waddling in and getting in, bringing it out. I don't know. It just like maybe doesn't sound like a great memory to other people, but for me, it makes me really proud of how she's able to help people shine in a way. And like, I felt like I was on top of the world as a baby. And like, I was so proud of it. Like the pictures of me with like the stick above the water and like getting it for the dogs.
I love it.
And then for my brother, I remember just being a really proud older sister. And we were sitting in the doorway of the kitchen in this old house that we lived in. And I'm 2 years older than my brother as well. And I remember I was probably about 5, and he was like really learning how to like play with different things. And I just remember like teaching him to like count on his fingers, and like I just this very beautiful, vivid memory of us sitting in the doorway, and there wasn't much to the memory, but the engagement of me being an older sister for the first time and helping him learn something new felt really, really special.
Yeah, I love that story, and it sounds like you had a really good relationship with your siblings. And I wonder, when you were a young girl, what did you dream about being?
A dancer. That evolved into wanting to be an architect. I love space. I love design. I love the way in which we move through space. And I think dance really played a role in that, and like how I understood my role within a spatial environment. But those were the two big things that I really dreamt of hard.
So did your parents have an influence over the path that you took, the degree that you chose, the college you went to? I just wonder.
Yeah, I mean, for sure they did. And I think I also felt lost because there were things that I wanted that I didn't see. I think I went to University of Kentucky first. My parents both went to Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU in Richmond, Virginia, which is where I ended up graduating from. But my dad working in the political world, being a lobbyist, coming from a family that were all either politicians or lawyers or lobbyists. I didn't want any of that. Like I grew up talking about politics. I grew up being exposed to having healthy debates and healthy discussions around differences of opinions, which I'm very grateful for. And then, you know, my mom worked in very much a service-driven world of working with people with disabilities, which also feel really grateful that I was exposed to worlds that included people who aren't often included. And I think those two things formed what later came to be. But I was very much a dreamer who lived in this like art-centered world. And I was allowed to like move my room around all the time and paint my room and do whatever I wanted to my walls, which not a lot of kids are allowed to do. I was given space to, you know, pick really wild outfits and like do what I wanted with that. My mom thought I'd go down the route of fashion, but gosh, if you saw my wardrobe now, you'd be like, there's no way. But I used to cut my clothes, and my parents weren't happy about that. But, you know, I'd make whatever I wanted. And that was the influence that they gave me. But I also didn't see what were the career paths I could take in front of me, right? Like I got a video camera very early on in my life, and I would film stuff. And in college, I was there during the early days of Facebook, and I was the one who was like always capturing stuff on my really crappy cameras and photos and videos and things like that, and trying to figure out how to clip them together. But I didn't see that in my parents, and they encouraged me to be whatever I wanted, but I didn't always know what did that actually look like. And I did sometimes feel this pressure of wanting to serve people, but not knowing how to show up in that way, especially because I wanted to plan parties and plan events and like bring people together and do things from that angle. But I felt this pressure sometimes to layer it with service and for purpose because they did such great things. So yes, they influenced me. Absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think that you were discovering your identity as a young girl and recognizing the real interest that you have around creativity and in the arts, but at the same time, seeing the passion that they have for the work that they're doing and serving people. And that passion can only influence your decision, but they weren't projecting it on you. So it was almost sort of like a, very natural, organic way for you to take the good things and figure out how does that, that passion sort of play into your ultimate decision. So what did you end up doing?
Oh, that's such a great question. My path has been through a lot of different things, and I feel like I've lived a lot of careers in a very short amount of time. So I originally studied interior design, quickly transitioned, moved from University of Kentucky to VCU and studied public relations and communications. I was very fortunate that my very first real job, I worked at a community college in the workforce development side, and I got a boss who knew I was severely underpaid and undervalued, and she taught me how to start a business. She allowed me to teach as an adjunct teacher on social media for thought leadership. And I essentially got all of my clients by way of this community college. They should have taken a cut of everything that I did, but instead she propped me up and helped me start a business. And so I've started 3 different businesses at this point, 2 of which were like, good learnings and great for like my own studies. But they've evolved a lot.
So Lia, I want to go back to, you sort of described your manager as sort of like a mentor who propped you up. And I think, first of all, that's fascinating. I don't hear that often from people. Like, you start your job and you're learning and you're, finding your way. And this idea that just right from the get-go, you had this mentor who was providing you with the space to tap into sort of this creativity and entrepreneurship, I think is pretty cool. How did that form? Because I feel like that situation is something, if you're starting a job, finding a mentor who really builds you up and allows you to sort of see opportunity versus getting into a job and just feeling like a lot of people sort of, become a number in a small fish in a big pond. And, they begin to get on this hamster wheel. And I'm generalizing here, but that wasn't the case in your situation.
Mm-mm. No, I was really lucky. That comes down to luck. I mentioned I graduated in the recession, and I worked at a wine shop to like make ends meet. I remember putting my resume out and A/B testing it. I have 2 names. So my first name is Aurelia and I go by Lia. And I wasn't getting callbacks, but my name Lia was getting callbacks more. But it was like junk jobs, right? Like it was just like a lot of scam jobs were out at the time. And I got this call from this woman, Dr. Jean Wesley. And I didn't even, I remember the call being very confusing. Like, I didn't even know what the job was or what I applied for, because I applied for it like 6 months prior to. I didn't know which name I used. So I was really underprepared for the first interview. And I remember walking in and she interviewed me. It was one interview situation. And I was super intimidated. And I remember asking her, I'm so sorry. This is so embarrassing. Because she called me Miss James. Like, schools, they have very traditional title usage. Mm-hmm. And so I said, I'm so sorry. I'm embarrassed. But like, what name did I use on my resume? And I think she thought I was like hilarious. And also like, I don't know, maybe she felt bad for me. I have no idea. But she was a tough woman. Like, a lot of people in the college were kind of intimidated by her. Mm-hmm. And I think because we had this really instant rapport, because I shared something super embarrassing, like I did not know what name I put on my resume, she was not intimidating to me. And so I became her, I actually got the job of an interim role. Her executive assistant was out on leave for some amazing, like, program. I don't remember what it was. She got some award that put her in some program. So I was taking on a 6-month role. And in that contract role, I got paid one price. That was like a decent salary. And as we built this rapport and this woman came back to her job, I then needed to find another job within the department to stay. And that job was very underpaid, like significantly. I was taking a pay cut to take it. And I had to go to a different campus that was a much further drive. And so I think she saw that commitment and how well I stepped into this role of executive assistant with very little context, and just took me under her wing. Like, she's a woman who protested in the 60s, and she's a woman who has done a lot of work to fight and advocate for women to get equality in the workplace, and incredibly thoughtful and educated. And like I said, she's tough. Like, she holds people accountable for what they say they're going to do, which is why I think it intimidated a lot of people. But I knew her as Jean. Like, everyone else knew her as Dr. Wesley, and I knew her as Jean. And I don't know, she just was amazing. And I was so incredibly fortunate to have this person in my life, because I remember I wanted to write blogs on how to build your brand on social media and like give it away for free. And she was like, "You're not going to give that away for free. Like, you're going to charge people." And I remember thinking, "But education should be free. Like, this should be free." And she said, "Yes, it should be, but you're giving away your hard work. Here's how you do it." And so she would sit down with me in her office and walk me through. And when it was time for me to leave, I worked there for 3 years. And I remember going into her office saying, you know, I'm ready to go. I want to do something different. She was so sad. But then when I told her I was starting my freelance business, she was so excited for me. And throughout the years, she's continued to check in and support me. You know, I reach out to her periodically when I hit different career challenges. And I am so honored that she continues to respond to me and continues to like answer my questions very, very thoughtfully. So yeah, I got really lucky on that one.
Well, I would caveat that by saying a little bit of luck, in my opinion. The way you're just describing that, and I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing, you know, so openly the story, because what spoke to me, Lia, is your authenticity. And I think when people start their first job, they're new, they're inexperienced, and sometimes you just can't help yourself. So you try to show up as being someone that you're not. And in your case, you were clearly not doing that. You know, you and just
I embarrassed the heck out of myself.
I was going to say, sidebar for a second. I love how you A/B tested your resume, because you know, there's a lot of people out there that are looking for work, and the idea of A/B testing your resume, which is a marketing document, I think is brilliant. Never thought about it being your name, but you know, for people who have names that have, you know, unconventional spellings, but you have a nickname, instead of putting your nickname with your original name on one resume, why not create two and see which one gets the response? But I think it's so cool how you were just authentic in that first conversation, and she recognized that. And I think that while you say it was luck, I think if you went in wearing armor and trying to be someone you weren't, I don't necessarily think the outcome would have been the same. And so I think there's definitely a lesson learned there.
Thank you. I've never really had that reflected back to me before, and I haven't shared the story in a very long time. So that is really helpful. I had not thought of it in that light. So thank you for that. Yeah,
of course. So this community college experience led to a string of entrepreneurial ventures. And what ultimately led you to like a clocking out moment where you sort of recognize that, you know, these experiments and the work that you were doing at the community college would ultimately lead to something bigger and something more meaningful? Was there a moment where you almost had a aha that you were called to do something that was much bigger than you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was always probably in me because I was exposed to entrepreneurship at such a young age. And I came out into the workforce when a lot of people my age were doing entrepreneurial things because we had to survive essentially. But yes, we had this consultant that used to work with us because we worked in two different locations and we had to use back then terrible technology to like have our meetings. They would be in one location, we were in the other, and we'd have a screen up to be able to see each other. And I mean, this is 2010, like the technology was terrible. And I remember she used to come in and help us learn how to have more effective meetings and use our technology to help us feel like we were in the same space. And I loved this woman. Like, she's wild and kooky and all the things. And I was really good at my job. I was really good at making people feel connected without realizing it. Like, I didn't realize that's what I was doing. I was really good at figuring out how to make people feel safe in those two spaces and like setting the table up so it felt like we were one extended table. But ultimately, like, I was bored in my job at the same time, like the subject matter of what we were doing. I was interested in workforce development. I was super interested in people getting access to jobs that were meaningful. And I felt like what we were doing was super slow and like dated, right? Because we worked in the state system. I didn't want to get dressed up every day. I wanted to get like down and dirty and like, be with people. And I also had this bigger dream of being in the world. I didn't want to be in Virginia. I wanted to be out in the world. And so that actually was the start of my nomadic lifestyle. And so I remember dreaming of this plan that I was going to drive around the country and I was going to document and I was going to blog about it. And like, this is before Instagram had stories. This is before Snapchat existed. This is before, a lot of that like stuff that we have now is very like slow social media. But I was a writer and I wanted to tell those stories of what happens. And I wanted to go around the country and document like what people did for a living. That was what I wanted to do back then. And I don't know, I just started planning it. And one day I just couldn't sit at my desk job anymore. I just was like falling asleep all the time and like, not really, but like, just, in that like zombie zone. And I don't know, I just decided I was going to do it. It was going to happen. And that was it. There wasn't like a major happening in that specific situation. It was just in my gut. I knew there was something more out there that I wanted.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think that everybody sort of has their own story. And in some cases, there's a lead up to burnout. Could be a scenario. In your case, boredom was the driving factor where over time, the work just became less fulfilling.
Interesting.
And while maybe you weren't working 80 hours a week and, hitting a place where the work was, just, creating some anxiety, it sounds like, the boredom of the work ultimately led to you doing some serious soul searching and figuring out, there's something that's more fulfilling on the other side.
Yeah. And absolutely. Like, I think then I was a very wide-eyed, child. I was like 25 years old, right? Like I was just so excited about what was to come. It was later in life that I would like burn out. And then also my body would like physically force me to take a break, right? I experienced those clock out moments later in life. That early stage, it was like really hopeful and like excited. And I think the best description is wide-eyed, right? Like, what else is out there? There must be more.
But it sounds like you got into another job that ultimately led to a burnout situation.
I worked for 2 different boot camps and built their career programs. I worked with 1,000 career changers coming from non-traditional tech backgrounds into learning how to become software developers. I helped them learn how to tell their story to get jobs that really intersected those skills and interests with the new skill set that they were developing. Super fun, very rewarding. I still have relationships with a lot of those students and like so honored they still keep me updated on where they are. Like a lot of them are like CTOs or like run their own businesses now because this was 10 years ago. But imagine working with that many people in such a condensed amount of time. It leads to extreme emotional fatigue. I went through their lives with them in a very short, intense moment. A lot of people, when they go through career changes like that, I'm sure you know this, are also going through other major life upheaval. So we walked through divorces together, losing animals, losing family members. And I shouldn't have been doing that part of it. It was my lack of experience and lack of like boundaries that I held it. So after 3 years of doing that, I was so burnt out, right? Like I had no energy for my personal life or myself. And I just remembered it was time to go. Like I was in tears every day for several months. And I didn't really understand it while I was in it, but it was incredible burnout that left me like, you gotta go.
Wow. Well, I can only reflect back to what you shared with your parents and sort of this kind of like this inner desire to want to help people. And it sounds like through that experience, you recognized how a lack of boundary setting can impact your overall well-being beyond the work. And
Absolutely.
Like I wrote down in the beginning, reframing the idea of human connection. And in that particular case, you were connecting in a way that was more meaningful beyond the work. And I think that's just sort of your DNA. And in looking back, you probably, for your own well-being, like thinking about boundary setting and like creating space to have human connection without it feeling like it's so overwhelming and unmanageable. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Did you experience any of that with, like, through all of the coaching that you've done? Like, you get so much exposure to other people's lives through career coaching, and like, how do you like shut it off or like create that distance, right? Like without it feeling like distance.
It's such a great question. Like, I believe it's a skill, but it's sort of like getting clear on what your values are and your work, and then also just being able to filter as things approach you, being able to connect to the feeling, and then being able to manage it like in the moment, right? Versus letting it impact you. And then over time, there's this sort of buildup. And then at that point, it's like you can't go back and sort of fix things. So you have to sort of be able to recognize it in the moment and then deal with it.
Absolutely. Like what I heard from you just now, I got a really great visual of like this like life bubble, right? And like you're letting people kind of like push up against it, but not like actually come in it. And like knowing too that you can't fix someone's situation. You can only help them by like being that mirror and reflecting back to them what they see. But like that skill of not letting people infiltrate your bubble is so important, but they have to feel like, like you're supporting them and connecting with them. It's just nice to hear how someone else has done it over the years, working with so many different people. 'Cause I think it's incredibly difficult to do and like protect that space at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I love how you describe the bubble, because you want to allow people to feel like that human connection's real, but you also need to give yourself the capacity to be able to serve more and to grow. And so if you get too bogged down with too much, then it restricts your ability to grow. And so it's certainly something that I've worked on quite a bit over the last few years. And it's so refreshing to get to a place where, you can manage it effectively.
Absolutely. I'm curious if you went through this journey at all, but like, I went from having like so few boundaries and like having like feeling like I was holding the weight of everybody's like lived experience and being responsible for helping them solve all the problems all at once, to then having this really weird boundary where I got so good at showing that I cared and like being just enough vulnerable that they felt connected to me, like I was taught to do as a coach. But like they never actually learn anything about you, right? Because that's not the role. The goal is to help them move through a situation, not to like have this like a friendship with you, right? But I got so good at that in my personal life, I was doing the same thing where I would give them just enough for them to feel really close to me, but they didn't actually know anything about me. I was just really a container for them. And then, you know, moving into the world I am in now, like having to unlearn all of those practices so that I can actually have human connection, because I was so good at creating connection for other people. I didn't actually experience that connection either. And so that was such an interesting journey, because younger in my life, I was so good at building friendships and connections. And like, I was the connector. I carried that connector on with me, but I didn't actually feel the connection. And I think for me, it was a symptom of the work I was doing as a coach and trying to like establish boundaries, learn how to have containers. And my, you know, my inner body couldn't separate work from personal life. And how do I show up differently in those two worlds? It took a while. And then finally, when I did, you know, it's such a different experience in understanding where human connection actually plays a role and the importance of it for all of us to feel it, not just to facilitate it.
So Lia, you talked about this burnout, and what was the big idea from that point in terms of what you wanted to build?
You know, I wasn't really sure at the time. I knew I wanted to keep doing the work in some capacity. I was fortunate that there were several businesses that had hired from the programs that I worked for that were really curious about the work that I did with our students on an individual level. And as they were losing those students a year, 2 years into their jobs with them, they recognized something was going wrong. And so I was fortunate that like there was just something there for me that I could do. There was also, I did some curriculum development for a foundation that worked in like workforce development work and skills-based hiring specifically. That was a natural evolution of the work I was doing, but I was definitely in fight or flight. And so I don't know that I was super intentional about it. I mean, I was, in the sense that I wanted to keep doing impactful work to help people outside of the situation I was working in at the time. But, you know, looking back, I also had other dreams. Like at this time I was living in Denver, Colorado, and I had been teaching myself how to do woodworking, totally outside the realm of all the other things I'd ever done. But I had a lot of time on my hands in the job that I was in, even though I was like overloaded emotionally. And so the way that I kind of dealt with everything was I was woodworking. And so I had these dreams when I quit my job. I remember texting my dad, I'm going to spend a third of my time coaching, a third of my time consulting, and a third of my time building furniture. And I'm going to make this much money doing all of it. And my dad was like, okay, good luck. Do you? But, you know, those things didn't happen. I did play with furniture, and I built some really cool stuff. But I didn't have the energy to build a business. And I didn't know that I really wanted to build a business around that, because it really was a release for me. It was therapeutic for me to like sit and sand wood and have a physical product when everything else had been in my brain.
Right.
To see something physically done, like released, I didn't have to touch it again. I wasn't responsible for it again. It was so different than how my work showed up. But the things that I just happened to have waiting for me as I left my job, being in burnout state, I think the entire time I was doing that work, while it was fun, it was exhilarating, I got to travel, I got to work with a ton of different teams, I was always in survival mode. And that doesn't help burnout, right? Like I didn't have the tools to really work through burnout. And it built on itself continuously. I had a really good business in 2019, 2020. And then I had a medical challenge happen in 2020, right at the height of the pandemic, right when my business was like really doing great being in the virtual world because I was already working in the virtual world. I had a detached retina. I had symptoms of it in March of 2020, but because everything shut down, I didn't get seen until May of 2020. Now, for anyone that's ever been around eye stuff or has had a detachment, you're supposed to go in immediately, like within the same day. And I waited 2 months, not unintentionally. I could not be seen for 2 months. By the time I got seen, my retina was almost to the center of my vision, which meant that I could have lost full vision in my right eye. Thankfully, did not. I got put into surgery the next day, and I wasn't really prepped for what was going to happen. I was told the night before that they changed the procedure on me because of how mine tore, and they were going to put a band around my eye that would make my eye 4 times smaller. And sometime, as someone who grew up in vision therapy and around optometry, I was like, wait, what do you mean? Like, what's that going to do to my vision? She was like, oh, after corrective lenses, you'll be 20/20. And I'm like, wait, but what? And she was like, but you're not going to be able to put contacts in or have a prescription for probably like 5 months. So I'm just supposed to be blind in one eye for 5 months. Like, I have a business. What do you mean? Like, I have contracts. I have a lot of work to do right now. Like, I need my eyes. So that situation, like being in fight or flight from 2017 through 2020 and just survival mode, and not even realizing I was in survival mode the entire time I was running this business, doing good work, but like not really thinking about how to make it sustainable or how to make it really work long term for me. I was just taking jobs and then having this physical disruption in my career when I didn't really have a safety net. I didn't have a backup plan. Like, this is all I knew for work. I used my brain and my eyes. And all of a sudden that wasn't an option anymore. Like, I wish I had had the tools to understand how to navigate burnout then. And I wish I'd had the tools and the courage to take a career change, like a real career change back then. But, timing is what it is. And I don't know that I would have stepped into the work that I am in today without the physical disability that I got out of it, and the force, right? Like, that forced me to reimagine who I was in the workplace.
Wow. That's crazy.
I dropped a lot on you. I'm sorry. That was a huge, here you go.
Yeah. Well, you're doing work and all of a sudden life happens and you're faced with, in your particular case, a health scare. And it's so interesting though, how nonchalant the industry was related to how they would treat your eyes. And, you were sort of like pushing back and saying, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah. Like, the woman that called me who did my surgery, she was just like, it was like no big deal that you're going to be blind for a few months. You'll be fine. Like, I think I was so calm about it until that call. And that call sent my anxiety through the roof. I remember calling my uncle, who's an optometrist, and asking for his advice. I called my doctor, who's an optometrist who's been my eye doctor since I was a child, called my mom. And I feel so fortunate that I was surrounded by experts who could support me through it, but they couldn't have protected me through that moment, right? Like, because what happened was, not only was my eye detached, or my retina was detached, but when I went into the procedure, they gave me anesthesia. They were getting ready to roll me back. And then an emergency came in, which delayed my operation for 3 hours. I don't know if it wasn't re-administered correctly or if my, anxiety did something to like counteract what was like the anesthesia. We've heard a ton of different theories, but I felt the majority of my surgery, which led me to muscle damage in my right eye. We have 4 muscles, and my 2 muscles in the top part of my eye are damaged. I literally had to relearn how to use my eyes together in order to see single vision. I had to teach my eyes and brain how to work together. I didn't teach it by myself. I went through vision therapy. So grateful for that, by the way. But it was a journey, and it's still a journey. I see things normally now. I interact with the world normally now, but it's different from how I did before. I don't know if that really makes sense, but it's been a real 5-year journey of figuring out who I am in this new context. And sometimes it still frustrates me that I lost time and Other times I'm really grateful that it forced me to sit with who I actually want to be and like how I want to show up in the world. It forced me to slow down. It forced me to like shut my computer and drive around the country and like meet people. And it forced me to like prioritize the things that matter most because I didn't have a lot of energy. Like I got tired really fast or I was in pain really fast. So there's a lot of good that happened out of it. But yeah, it's a really interesting chapter. So that's like everyone's warning of like, if you have a gut feeling that you got to change your career, go for it because other things can happen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just thought about Haley Pollock, who is a guest that I interviewed who was diagnosed with cancer in her 30s and had two young girls. And out of that came a nonprofit that she started. And it becomes your identity and who you are. And you certainly work through a lot of intentional things to sort of bring together what your identity, what your work was going to look like. So, Lia, tell me about the traveling table and some of the things that you're doing today.
Yeah, thank you. The traveling table is such a beautiful experience where we bring strangers together in very small settings. It's hyper curated for people from different backgrounds who we believe should know each other based on certain crossovers or intersections with other folks at the table. It's usually around a topic or a theme, but the conversations that come out of it are just absolutely incredibly beautiful. And it all stemmed from me trying to figure out who I was. After everything that I just described, I drove around the country with this table I built. And I had this theory that if I popped it up, people would come. And they say, if you build things, people don't come. It happened. They came. And they wanted to connect for different reasons. They were all struggling with connection for their own reasons. And it's just been an incredible experience to see people come from a very genuine place. We don't force vulnerability. We open up the space for people to be heard, not debated. We facilitate it. Like I have a small team of people. When I say we, it was just me for a while, but it's a small group of us that are doing this. And the hope is we're not prescriptive in what happens after the table, but we're connecting people with very clear intention that we want them to go on connecting with each other, knowing each other, being with each other in some capacity. But what that looks like is up to them. And it's really incredible to hear from folks who have come to the table who are still connecting with folks that were at their table and folks that were at other tables. It's been like this interesting stamp of approval that someone came to the table, they must be open to new connections. And so one woman who joined us for a dinner in 2023 has hired folks from other dinners for very different jobs. And she reaches out and connects with them on LinkedIn and Instagram. And that's been really special to know. We had one matchmake happen. I'm not supposed to know about it, but I know about it. Two people ended up dating after our dinners. That's not what we do. That is not my skill set, but it was really cool to know that that happened. And, you know, people have gone on to support each other in book launches. And I had one guy who came, who I had met virtually during the pandemic for work. And it was super cool because he didn't tell me that he was afraid to be around people since the pandemic. Like he's been like double masked for years. And he came to one of our dinners in 2023. And it was the first time he sat down with us or sat down with people that weren't his family and unmasked. And he sat between people. And then he went on to go to a book launch for a woman at the table. And then he came to one of my pop-ups. And then he started speaking on stages. And now he has this community of people that he runs an intentional community now. And it's just so cool to see what comes out of it. But my goal is that if we can elevate more stories of people's lived experiences and help people learn how to have nuanced conversation, can we create more compassion, curiosity, and empathy in our society so that we don't think every conversation needs to be black and white and that there needs to be a right answer and a wrong answer, because there's not. There are some right answers and some wrong answers, but most things have so much more nuance than that.
Wow. Well, that is so amazing. It's so inspiring. I want to sit at the traveling table.
I want you to come sit at the traveling table. Come join us.
Please, I would love to. I would love to. Yeah, so you'll have to share your information on how I can do that. Lia, I wrote down a word here, and I was just curious. The company is called And Human. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious about the meaning behind And Human and how that connects with, when you think about legacy, is there any intersection between those two? And I wonder if that's something you think about.
Yeah. Wow. Good questions. And Human, I think, at the end of the day, no matter what any of us are doing, no matter like how we're trying to advance our lives or survive our lives or contribute to the world, if we're consuming, if we're creating, like at the end of the day, we're all like, we're just human, and we're probably just trying to have a good life, whatever good life means to you. And I think through all the people I've met, like there are some consistencies that like really root us into each other, which is that like we all want something out of this lifetime, and we all want to feel happiness and supported and loved and belonging in some capacity that means something different to everybody. But like those are kind of the core consistencies that we see when we talk to people. And to me, like, I want what we're doing to remind everybody that like, you're just human. That person's just human. And we're all just human. Mm-hmm. And so like that And Human piece is my way of reminding people that all of our work folds up into core human skills. Mm. And that's, conversation, connection. It's compassion, curiosity, understanding. And sometimes those things don't feel like they're the hot thing to sell, but they're probably the most important thing for us to be doing, and for us to remind each other that like, that's what we're all trying to do as we kind of bump into each other in this world. And so I think in that is my way of creating a legacy. I think this work is so much bigger than me. This isn't about me. It's not about creating a viral dinner series. Like, I don't want that. I want a skill set that trickles on and on and on and helps people find each other and find their communities. I want to teach people how to be open and welcome that kind of connection in ways that I didn't always know how to do it for myself. So yeah, I think like exactly what we're building is with a really hopeful look into the future, and that it has a lasting impact well beyond the people that we directly impact, which is why we have media too. It's to reach people who we wouldn't directly reach otherwise.
Mm-hmm. That completely resonated with me on so many fronts. I think mm-hmm. that it's so inspiring, and I feel like this conversation was certainly infrastructure to more conversations to come. And it's really inspiring. I love how you are intentional about the connection of each human. And it's not about, it's not about going viral, or it's in the moment, human connection. It's intentional. And I just love how you're reframing this conversation. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and like giving me the space to like talk through this. I think what you're doing is so important and impactful, and you really are helping other people see each other through this series. And it's neat to kind of be on this side of things. Like usually I'm facilitating it. So I really appreciate you holding space for me to kind of walk you through my journey too.
Yeah, absolutely. So Lia, I'm going to share all of your information in our show notes. So anyone who's interested in connecting with you and your work, potentially connecting at one of your events, the Traveling Table will provide that information. Thank you so much. This has been lovely. I've enjoyed our conversation. I'm sad that it has to end.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having out such a great time for us to talk through. And I really think what you're doing is important. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everyone for listening. Until next time. Hello, everyone. It's Raymond again here. I want to take a moment to say a special thanks to our sponsor, Career Minds. They're a global provider of career transition and career development solutions. And if you'd like to hear more on Clocking Out, we'd love for you to take a second and click follow of your favorite podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a rating or review. It really helps new listeners find the show. You can also watch the full episode on YouTube. Just search Clocking Out with Raymond Lee and hit subscribe. And if you're listening on Spotify, don't forget to check out our episode polls or just drop us a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Finally, if you or someone you know has a story to share about navigating change, taking a risk, or rethinking your career, we want to hear from you. Head to the link in our show notes and fill out the form to be considered for a future episode. Until next time, remember, if you're just sitting there thinking that you're stuck or you're unsure of your career or future and you think it's time for a change, I would encourage yourself to ask these 3 questions. Does my career or work make me feel alive? Am I doing the things that genuinely matter to me most? Am I creating value for myself and for others? Until next time.